everybody.
Look,
yeah, what we like to do is we like to start off on the right foot. Every podcast start off on the right foot. If you guys knew how crazy I get driven by this, because it's always a different thing. Always a different thing. All right. Well, everyone, like I said, it's been I said it, but you didn't hear it. It's been a very interesting 24-hour news cycle for fans of 100 Thieves LCS. There are lots of opinions going around out there. Before we jump into this, we just want to remind you that what 100 Talk is us trying to promote the most reasonable take, the most measured take on all of this. All right. So as we go through this, Jordan and I are going to do our best to be reasonable, to back up what we're saying, to let you know when we don't know. Everything. That's what we're here to do. So that being said, welcome to 100 Talk. I'm Cole. That's Jordan. 100 Talk is officially powered by Rip It Energy Fuel. Shout outs to the only genuinely good tasting energy drink out there, Rip It. Not doing ASMR moments, but we will be powered by this all night long.
We got a long pot ahead of us, Cole. I'm gonna need some energy fuel.
That's right. So the first, we're gonna get some things out of the way at the beginning, and then we'll dive into the real meat of the conversation that everybody wants to have. So let us take 5 to 10 minutes to just make some very quick observations about the games from this past weekend. Then I promise we'll make that quick, and then we'll jump into the Meteos and Stunt benching and replacement with Contractz and Poome. And so let's do that first. Jordan, the CLG game.
Right. So an in-depth play-by-play review of CLG game. We'll spend about 3.5 minutes talking about Meteos. No, this is going to be quick. But here's the thing, Cole. On a normal week, we would have a ton to talk about from both of these games. So it's hard to really do this justice.
Very eventful, couple of games. So
yeah, and hugely consequential. Obviously, there were consequences to the tune of 2 roster changes. There are some key takeaways here. It feels a little bit silly to spend a lot of time talking about dissecting play from either Meteos or Stunt, because that's no longer going to be an important factor for how this team plays moving forward. But there are some other important things to note and take away and think about and ensure that people are not losing sight of. So the CLG game was actually really pretty strong for us. We were winning that game for a lot of that game. Our individual lanes were in pretty good shape. Very importantly, Ryoma won his lane and had it was definitely a game that was a lot closer to the end of Spring Split, which after the first 2 weeks we felt was hugely consequential to his ability to stay on this roster. There's a version of this podcast, Cole, where we're talking probably about a mid lane change too. It's not quite as ready, but you can imagine that if he played the first 6 games of this split like he played the first game of this split, that's an emergency situation
for sure.
So he's not there. Happy to report he's not there. I know that there are always going to be those who are not convinced on Ryoma, probably if he is going to reach his peak, until he reaches that peak, and that's fine. And this is not the podcast. We're going to debate that. We've had that conversation. But I think everybody is going to acknowledge that he was our standout performer. I think it's him and Someday, right? They were the standout performers from this weekend. Strong play all around. Wasn't perfect play. Hard to have perfect play and lose 2 games that are close, or that should have been close. But I am personally much encouraged to see that Ryoma is still capable of playing as he did at the end of last split. Hopefully the trend continues, and he was a problem for the enemy team. He was our problem for them, and he was a big part of the reason that we were as competitive as we were this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's not debatable for the TSM game. For CLG, I largely agree with this as well. I mean, he won lane outright. Like, I don't see how you can look at that and not come away with that conclusion. I'm not as rosy on the whole CLG game as you are. I thought we had a great early game, like fantastic early game, really. And then like the wheels fell off, and I think that made it hurt even more the way things progressed. Just really just like weighed everything down. It's like we were in a great position. Everything looked wonderful at the start, and then it just fell apart.
And for me, the thing that was concerning, so there were some good spots. Yeah, it was very uncharacteristic of how we usually play. So even when you watch the heist, right, they talk about like our early game is not super steady. I think somebody made that comment. So early game was pretty good.
Yeah,
we just didn't commit to the plays at the times in the game where you need to commit to plays to actually take a lead home, right? Which usually has not been our problem. We're usually pretty good at actually closing games out, especially if we can get a lead, right?
Yeah, it's usually been that we tend to have a stronger later game than early game. That's generally been the storyline with us. But with this one, I mean, it's like even in draft, I don't know how everybody felt about draft, but I felt like we were set up to succeed because we had we did the Volibear flex, which actually gave Someday and Ryoma protection in the drafting. We got us counter pick for both of them basically. And it was off of that flex. I thought it was really intelligent. And then the other thing about the Volibear pick was the attempted ult over the Dragon Pit wall, which was one of the most embarrassing plays that we've seen, I think, as 100T fans.
It's up there with the Huhi teleport.
Man, but that wasn't his fault. Anyway, we don't need to go into that. It was not fun to see that. And it just felt like a cursed game, and it really got away with us, and we should have won that game, in my opinion. I don't think you specifically mentioned this, so just in case you didn't, and sorry if I'm a bad listener, friend, Cody didn't have a good game. Cody had a bad game. I don't think there's any way around it. It's not like
caught out. Yep.
All year long we've been saying, hey, Stunt is just not playing well. He's been feeding a lot of kills. What can Cody do? Cody's just had to sit back, and he's been pretty solid. That game was bad from him. And honestly, this whole weekend was Cody's worst weekend that he's had in a really long time.
Yeah.
Getting this out of the way again, I'm fine giving that guy a pass on this weekend. I think there are a couple things at play, one of which we'll talk later. And the other thing is just like he usually is much more solid than this. It's not like this is every week we're having this problem with Cody. So I'm willing to be like, hey, bad weekend for him. Let's see what happens in the future.
Yep. That's where I'm at too. He's earned it. Right?
Yeah.
He's earned it with steady, reliable play. We know, and here's the thing. If we can get the right players around him and support for him, the steady, reliable play that he brings and has brought for the last split and a half will be there and will be that much more powerful and important for us. So I don't hear anybody saying this bad weekend from Cody is something we need to be super concerned about. I think that's right.
Yep.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think that's right too. Okay, so TSM. Another time I thought we had a pretty decent early game. There was much made on the broadcast about Meteos's jungle path in the beginning. Good on him. That was great.
Triple buff.
Our bot lane got absolutely annihilated. Again, Cody and Stunt both just not having a good weekend. Bot lane got totally smashed. That was not what you wanted to see. I mean, it's double lift, but like, dang.
Yeah.
And it was another Blitzcrank game that where we just weren't, we just weren't prepared for the Blitzcrank.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to seem oversimplified, you guys, but he has one skill, and if he can land it, you're going to lose the fight. And if he doesn't, you should be good. He landed so many hooks on us. It was crushing. It was so demoralizing.
Yeah.
This is another one that I listened to old timey style, the radio broadcast. It was thrilling even listening to it, but just I heard the clown car sound, man. It was giving me like trauma from hearing that thing and the hook go. And sure enough, most of the times he threw that hook out, it came with a kill on the backside of it.
Yeah. Ryoma, I thought, lost lane. Not by a small margin too. I think like he outright lost the lane, but as was clearly evident, he still was able to become a beast in this game.
Yes.
This was, I don't think this is his cleanest stat sheet, but this was probably his most impactful game that he's had for us. Like he had like a 7-0-7 Oriana game, which was really crazy last split.
Yeah.
But this felt like, oh shoot, like this dude is legit. It's him versus Bjergsen for the whole game.
Yeah.
Like that, like whoever is able to outplay the other is going to win this game. And that went into what, like a 50-minute backdoor to win dramatic ending.
Longest game of the split.
Yeah. So it was good to see that, at least. Like I don't think people can really have much to say on the negative side for Ryoma for this game, other than like I said, he did get he did lose lane early on, but
and he got caught hooked with his flash up, right?
Yeah, did he have his flash up there? I can't.
That's what I heard on I think it was the broadcast. They're talking about that. But again,
I know there was one time where he got caught. He should have ulted out of the hook range, and he did not.
Either way, it is one error in a 50-minute game.
Yeah.
Right, where there's a lot going on, so it's not.
Well, he didn't just make one error, but I know what you mean.
Well, no. But that example is one example of a mistake that you would just outright say is a mistake. Here's what I did see from him, though. Sometimes I think what I've heard people say is he had a good game. He was cleaning up, right? He was on cleanup duty. The team fed him kills. There were a lot of plays that he made that were all on him.
Yeah.
Right. And I think of the double lift running at him and him standing his ground and killing double lift. Like, that's a big play. That's a huge play for the game, kind of for your career, for your confidence. That was the moment where I was like, okay, so he can do that in this game. And he continued to do that. And he continued to put pressure on their base. Got us right to the doorstep. Couldn't take us all the way. It took a guy like Bjergsen to stop him, right? And I will sign me up for Bjergsen is still the better mid laner. I like Ryoma. I'm not convinced that he's better than Bjergsen. I don't think you could convince me that Bjergsen's an all-time great.
Yep.
For this reason, he can do stuff like that. So it was a heartbreaker to lose, like just utterly deflating. I hope that Ryoma can take the things from this game and just continue with them, because this is the kind of thing that we really, really need from him, especially as we look at and talk about some of the changes that are going on.
Yeah, I do want to just make a note. Stunt playing the Thresh, I legit don't think there was an on-cast hook from in the whole first 25 minutes. Definitely not one that we saw. Like that was crazy. It was like we're not engaging with him, which all right. Like that's kind of been one of the problems is taking too many engages, I think. But that was interesting to see. It was almost like there's like a fixed limit, I don't know.
Yeah, he was kind of a lantern bot, right, for Varus, right? You take Varus, you take
and
Thresh,
he did that pretty dang effectively a couple times. So yeah, but you want the rest, right? That could have been a difference maker. I will say also that I think Someday had one of those Someday games where huge lane lead, little to show for it at all, and it's almost like he's almost like a real threat. But the way it plays out, it's like he doesn't end up finishing up kills. And it always seems like it's luck, but when it seems like bad luck over long stretch, there may be more to it. I don't know, but it's one of those games where he's not getting kills, even though he has a massive lane lead, and we're not able to snowball that massive lane lead into anything else. And I think as a whole, it looked like our macro was just hesitant during this game, and that ultimately cost us. We may, I don't know for sure. We may have been able to finish that game, once we get the ace after the Baron and just push in. We took 2 inhibs and left. It's possible. I don't know. I'd have to carefully watch the VOD on the back end, but there's stuff like that and just other things where it just looked like we're not exactly sure what we are doing.
This game left me feeling like, do we have a clear in-game leader? And it's not fair to compare anybody to Bjergsen, by the way, just put that out there. He is very clearly kind of the template of an in-game leader, right? So many times against our team, he has made a decision or a play, or you can tell his team has decided to do something that has that has been the turning event. That's the kind of thing that you get from somebody like him. And again, you only get one Bjergsen, but who is his mastery level is so high that he can basically bring his team, everybody on his team. I mean, his team is not the team that he's had in the past, right? Like he is the leader in that squad, you can tell. And it just carries over from roster to roster. They've had huge jungle shakeups. So
yeah,
we miss that. And I think we need that really badly. And I don't think we were getting it from Meteos because, I mean, we're 1-5.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's where we find ourselves. So after week 3, we are sitting at 1-5. We are almost as bad as Dignitas, record-wise. I don't know if anyone wants to make that reach, but we're gonna find out soon enough where we stand on that. But yeah, so those are just our general feelings from those 2 games this past weekend.
Yeah.
Now let's have like the meaty conversation. That really so Jordan and I, like this may be just a totally unstructured talk about so many different things. Here's what I'll say as a disclaimer. There will be lots of questions being posted in chat, lots of reactions to what's being said and everything. I just encourage you guys to just give us time. We're going to make our way through this conversation, and this will likely be a longer pod than usual, which is the opposite of what I usually say. So that should tell you just how long it'll be. So let us get through this stuff and kind of try and keep comments to talking about what we're talking about. And just let us make that the whole trip.
Yeah.
Now I want to start out with Jordan and I talking about what we each would have wanted to see in an ideal situation and how this matches up against it. And then we will get into the particulars of everything that happened. What happened? What does it mean? Is this deserved? All that stuff. So first of all, I'll go first, Jordan, if you don't mind.
Yep.
I am supportive of this in general. In an ideal world, I would have wanted to see Stunt changed first in isolation, okay? And then given that a week or 2 and see, what the impact is to see if it's still necessary to make the change at jungle. I saw that as a higher liability. Obviously, so with Poome being in there, I don't know if that means Poome has his visa now and he's going to be there with the team. Before I didn't know what realistically what the options were to replace Stunt. So in fact, when they announced Meteos first, I was thinking, well, I mean, that's probably just a matter of what they are literally able to do at this point. Since they replaced both, we know that's not true. But so I'll just say, I would have preferred to make the change with Stunt first. Mm-hmm. I honestly would have changed it in the split, the split after spring split, and see what happened. But given this time frame,
you didn't have Poome.
Yeah, we didn't.
Assuming
have Poome.
that he now has a visa, he didn't have then.
Right. So making that change, I would have liked to do that in isolation, then given Meteos a week or 2 to see if he comes back up, and if he didn't, continue to make the planned change at jungle. So that's kind of where I stand on that. So both changes I'm okay with. I would have liked to see him one at a time, but I get it.
Yep.
What about you, Jordan?
Yeah. The thing that I come back to is, I think last week I said, let's do good science, isolate our variables. So I'm always nervous to see us changing multiple things at one time, because let's say that Contractz just isn't it. And I'm just using an example here. I'm not basing this on anything I've seen from either of them. But let's say Contractz isn't the guy for this squad. And as a result, the jungle support duo is flat. And then you look at it and you say, well, Poome is also whiffing, right? He's not bringing what we need to see either. So it just makes it that much harder to get clean data on this stuff.
Yeah.
To say Poome is actually great and we think he can make it, but Contractz but Meteos is not contributing in the same way that we've seen through the first 3 weeks. And so let's try Contractz. So that's where I still am, but I'm with you in that I think, I don't think it hurts you have a good, solid option in Contractz, right? He is tested more recently. I know he's not been as dominant, but he's has LCS experience. He's got a lot of, he's been to Worlds. So it's not like this is a pure desperation move where it's like, well, how do you think that could work, right? Like, what are you looking at here that you'd say, yeah, why not give it a try? Like, do you guys know anybody who plays jungle? Maybe he could try it out, right? It's not that. But my reservations are still based mainly on the fact that we're doing more here than kind of the minimal approach.
Yeah.
Which is one at a time.
Yep. Good. Now I'm gonna debate a couple points that you just made later on.
Mm-hmm.
But now with both of our opinions just out there, let's back up and talk about everything that's happened up to this point. So first of all, Jordan, who could have predicted that this Meteos situation would happen? Oh wait, we did. This part will probably make some people upset. But look, this is the exact thing. When we did we did an emergency pod when they announced Meteos was re-signing with us. It was like, all right, he's been great at Optic, but this is weird, and this is clearly weird, and we haven't like fully put this to bed. And the thing that we like word for word said, this is a quote from our podcast, right? I think it was you that said it, was, why should we be confident that we're not going to be here redoing the show that we did in 2018 when he left?
Happy 2-year
right,
birthday.
Exactly. Yeah. Happy anniversary. So here's the thing. I think this was a calculated risk that they took. It's not like 100 Thieves wasn't aware that, there were problems the first time around with this. Mm-hmm. They knew about that, and they had to accept the risk that if things didn't go well on the Rift, there's a possibility of that happening again. All right. So if anyone's blindsided by this or think it's weird, it's like, we knew we were getting in bed with this, right? When it happened. And if everything worked out and we did well, like, we probably would have avoided this. But if the team struggles and there's a change that needs to be made, there's a very high likelihood, in my opinion, that this would happen. And this was something that, we were screaming from the rooftops when this happened.
Yeah. I want to put a point in here. And if it's part of what you want to talk about further on, just say, hold that. So I think that there needs to be a conversation about what happened. Because if you look at this on paper, you'd say Stunt has been released effectively, right? That I'm sure, I doubt they've like actually signed stuff to make that official, but he knows he's not coming back. The team knows he's not coming back. Meteos isn't there. He is still on the roster. He's still signed to this team. We can still play him. We could go next week and say, changed our mind. Actually, he's going to play. And that would be an absolute disaster, but we technically could do that, right? So when we talk about what happened, the actual, I think one of the most interesting things is Meteos' reaction is really what is kind of setting the stage for this whole thing. And we don't know what the team did in this. We know what Meteos did.
Yeah.
Right. And it's possible that what they did is they went to him and said, easier week next week. We want to get Contractz some reps. And then he tweeted everything we saw him tweet. And here we are. So we don't really know what they did. I don't know if we'll know. One of the things that's happening tonight is PapaSmithy's going on Hotline League. So maybe he'll say some more about that. And we'll be done by then.
So we'll make sure we're done for that. And then we're going to head over and watch. So
that's important. But we actually don't know. Just like last time, this is exactly the same. Almost play by play, right? And I think that is really important because it might be that what we had in mind is completely different from what we now have, right? So far as how this plays out, what the messaging looks like, strategically, how we make these things happen. I mean, PapaSmithy said 6-man roster. So what's not to say that they went to him and said 6-man roster, and this is what followed. And that is one of the things that we put out there when we did our pod 2 years ago on the same topic, and when we did our emergency pod about we're bringing Meteos back, is there is a variable in this out of your control, and it's Meteos himself. And we saw how this went down last time, and we kind of pieced together the story. And I'm hopeful that in some way, like, he can go to academy and grind and earn his spot back and play like the Meteos that we saw at Optic at the end of last year. That would be ideal for us. I don't know if it's possible. I just don't.
Yeah. Just after this kind of thing happening a couple times, I don't think it's possible. And you're absolutely right. We don't know how this went down. Okay. And actually we're going to take this time to talk about what we do know. And before we talk about what we know, I do want to say I would also make the assumption based on the timing of the tweets and the timing of when 100 Thieves answered everything. I don't think they planned on making that announcement that night. I think they were going to save it.
I cannot.
And I think their hand was forced. So that's an assumption. So let's talk about what actually happened. So the tweets are now deleted. Meteos has deleted his tweets, but they were screen capped by like everybody. So they're out there. You can find them. We're actually going to go through them because this was our first like information given to us was coming from his perspective. His first tweet. This is going to sound like a troll post, but just got word that I'm being benched after week 3 summer again, XD. Not sure why I expected anything different. Okay, so lets us know that he's being benched. Expresses that like, yeah, I'm like, why did I think things were going to be different this time? I don't know. Maybe because there's new team management. Maybe because everybody also talked about it and said like, we've come to terms with this. We're good. Like Meteos himself said that. So, all right, cool. Second tweet.
He did say, I just want to point this out. I got word that I'm being benched. Not that I'm being traded. Not that I'm off the team.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm being benched, which doesn't, so that's important. That's from Meteos himself.
Yeah. All right, good. Assuming everything that we're reading here is true, which, it's one side of the story.
But that kind of does match up with what we've heard since from the
team.
The only stuff we've heard from the team that coincides.
I'm with it. Okay, Tweet 2. This was obviously the most inflammatory thing of the night. Pretty weird to hear the players on my team didn't know about or agree with the decision. All credit goes to Zix, Jungle Juice, and he added these coaches, by the way. He added them. He didn't just say their names. He actually tagged them. All credit goes to Zix, Jungle Juice, and PapaSmithy. Clearly, the people not on the team know what's best for it. All right, so that is directly going personal, calling them out, tagging them in it. Coach, and GM. All right, so direct attack. Opens a direct attack on the team staff, and then insinuates that the players on his team didn't know about the decision. Also insinuates that they didn't agree with the decision, which I don't think is even possible to know at that point.
Yeah. You can't really do both of those unless, there's a step that we're missing, but.
And more on this later. Okay. Tweet 3. I can see why people are. Oh, go ahead. Go.
Mind if I do just a quick note?
Yeah.
It is so weird to me that he makes a distinction of those 3 people as being not on the team. Has anyone ever been on a team where you thought that the like coaching staff aren't part of the team? It just seems like a weird distinction to me.
I mean, I get the distinction between players and coach.
Yeah.
And I guess that, they play without an active coach in their headsets or whatever, but it's like, from all we can tell, they spend like most of their time, everybody there doing the thing. So,
well, but it's like, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but it just seems like a strange dynamic to put out there.
Yeah. Okay. Tweet 3. I can see why people are calling me unprofessional for my tweets. Not really sure how else to express my anger about the situation. Sucks to be scapegoated after the amount of effort I put into the team. Again, we're going to break down some of these things, but first of all, acknowledges, I know that people are saying this is unprofessional and I get it. Okay, fair. Not sure how to express my anger. Maybe later or maybe in a different platform, maybe in a different way. I don't know. That doesn't make much sense to me. And then sucks to be scapegoated after the amount of effort I put in the team. That we will most certainly revisit. And then his final tweet was, I've never cared much about my stats and have always played to put my teammates in good situations. Of course, my stats will not look good if we aren't winning. So that was what he said on the situation when he was still on unfiltered mode. And then he deleted those things. Okay. Yep. So they're still out there. It's still public record, but if you delete those tweets, you know you did something wrong.
We just read them. So
yeah,
there you go. They're at least out there to that degree.
All right. So I wanted to quickly, so we're going to, like I said, we're going to go and like analyze these positions and the kind of like insinuations being made here.
Yeah.
But first, I want to just talk about like what probably happened. And this, so full disclosure, this is speculation. We obviously don't know what happened. This is kind of like my Occam's razor for what likely happened in this situation, and to me explains, possibly what would have happened. I think again, given the timing, the team met with him that night, talked him through those options. If we are to believe what was said in PapaSmithy's video about that conversation, they discussed several things with him about how to proceed. I'm guessing that this dude just like when that meeting finished, he immediately went out and just rage tweeted. Okay? Because it's exactly what happened in 2018 was after they delivered that message, he immediately got onto Twitter and rage tweeted about it. So I'm not even sure if he gave an answer to them. I'm not even sure if the meeting concluded or what. But I can understand getting fiery about something and then going into like a passion tweet rage and putting that out there. Like I can understand that motivation and where that would come from. And especially since he's deleted them, like that's what it seems like to me. It looks like this dude was mad and he rage tweeted and then was like, dang, I just like tanked myself. So and I will say this, like when this happened in 2018, he was successful at getting the public on his side.
Yep.
He definitely was successful at that. And I will fully say I'm not fully convinced that was an intentional motivation behind what he did last night. Okay? I'm not fully convinced of that because I think that there's enough like emotion and passion and like anger about a decision like that's enough for you to just fire off tweets. I don't think like necessarily he's doing that, but we'll come back to that. But the fact is, for the second time, he preempted the team's communication. And anytime you do that, you put the first angle out on the story, and that's where it starts going wide. That's where people will start down this like path of reasoning and logic on what actually happened. So you immediately have that control.
Yeah. And on that point, just a quick note, it shouldn't be surprising that people form their takes and opinions based on what they are told happened. And, maybe we'll get into some of these specifically, but it's just, I'm reminded how much time we had to spend talking about what likely happened. And I will be honest with you, Cole, I'm actually really encouraged by how a lot of the people I've been looking at on Twitter are reacting to this, right? Which is like, hey man, sometimes people get benched. Like,
yeah,
maybe it's not because the people on the team are horrible. Maybe it's because they thought that it would help them win more, right? And the first time around, I think he did the way he handled it. Everybody just said, he told us what happened. You guys, he just said what happened. So that's pretty bogus. That's pretty bogus. 100 Thieves. That's actually a really low blow. That's kind of sneaky backhanded stuff. And maybe it's like fool me twice. And people are now like, are we sure that we know the whole story on this? Because that doesn't seem likely.
It does certainly seem like there are way less people on his side of this, and that the people who are tend to be one of two groups. One is Meteos fans, just like, like fans of the player, no matter where he is, and then haters of 100T, because there are definitely people who just like they like it when things don't go well for 100 Thieves, and they like to pile it on Twitter. So those are like the two groups that I see. Seems like everybody who's neutral or on the fan side is excuse me, is coming down on 100 Thieves side. Go ahead, Jordan. Sorry.
Yeah. So we'll see. And I think the fact that he ended up deleting his tweets kind of shows you that he wasn't getting the initial kind of like bump in sympathy and support from people that he was maybe expecting to or hoping to. So it is what it is. I mean, we'll see, right? Like the other thing that's important to remember is it was the following conversations or lack thereof that really led to a lot of the frustration from fans. So look, I think it's positive that PapaSmithy got out there and said some stuff, right? As early as he did. And clearly, again, I'm sure that was not the video he was expecting to make. I think he posted something like 4 a.m. saying, wow, that was a rough day.
Yeah.
So he's working overtime, right? He's putting in the hours. But I do think, right, as in the same way that the people at the organization remember the first time this happened, they also remember the communication fallout. I mean, how many times did we see Nadeshot on camera talking about his commitment to communicating more?
Yeah.
And that he would do better next time. Well, here's next time. We're here. Thankfully now, it's not all on him. He has more people on staff to handle this kind of conversation and messaging. That's good. That's how it should be. You don't need the owner to be out in front of the camera saying what your League of Legends staff did. So, it's kind of like the salty run back a little bit, right? Like, yep, okay, we've seen it before. Let's see how the rest of it goes. We all have the information. We've got the intel.
Yeah. We'll talk later about how much intel is being put out from 100 Thieves side and whether we're satisfied of it. I do want to just circle back on this question of intent. Did he intend to get the fans on his side, or did he intend to make 100 Thieves look bad when he did this? Or was it merely like a crime of passion,
Right.
Because I brushed that subject earlier, and I think that's a question for people, I think, that tend to have the same views that we have, where we have been more standoffish about Meteos being here a second time, and we were more on the side of 100 Thieves when this happened in 2018. So that's a relevant question to them. I'll tell you that, first of all, like I said earlier, I'm guessing that this was just his immediate post-meeting reaction. So you have that. The other thing is he tagged the coaches and PapaSmithy.
Yeah.
And he brought up those points about like his teammates. Like that, to me, it doesn't scream like you are trying to get the public on your side when you're like viciously going after somebody. Like when you're just outright like tagging them and everything. These people are stupid. They don't know, like the team knows. That to me doesn't like, I'm going to carefully craft this thing that turns the audience around to me. You know what I mean? Right. So am I off on that, or is he like, is he just like 150 IQ instead of 200 IQ?
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think you're right on that. Like if this was a carefully crafted Twitter campaign to boost yourself, I think you play it differently. Here's the other thing. I mean, respect for PapaSmithy to come out and make the video he did and say we're open to all kinds of different options. It's just like it's a tale of two reactions, right? And like communication strategies, where anybody listening to this, put yourself in your own job. If you sent that tweet about your bosses, would you expect for them to like hold you in high regard? I mean, he burned the bridge while he was standing on it, basically, right? Not even on his way out. Like he doesn't have, there is no exit plan here. So I'm concerned about that.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, yeah, it would have been great if this would have gone differently. And we had confidence that he actually had a place in this team and roster, whether it's LCS or Academy going forward, there's damage done, right? And you can delete the tweets, but it's still out there, and it still is something we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Like it, and we're not talking about it because we're trying to perpetuate this conversation. That is a small reflection of what was undoubtedly a much larger conversation. And I can only imagine what the rift is. And I know there is a rift because he made that clear. So that gives me concern that there's damage there that I'm sure is not repaired yet. It's been 24 hours, less than.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, the damage is always going to be done. So it's one of those things where, like, I think the reason we're asking the motivation question is because, like, how, like, people want to know who to blame in this situation, which I think is generally pretty unfair. Yeah. But as I said at the top of this podcast, you and I, we designed these conversations to give what we believe to be the most, like, measured and reasoned takes on what has happened. We're trying to balance, like, the information against the assumption, and damage is done. I don't think it was fully intentional on his part. I just think his emotions got the best of him. Yep. But the thing, so what usually happens is there's like something that would keep you in check on this, right? And that is like self-awareness. Like, what ground are you standing on? And as Chat mentioned earlier, in 2018, when everything happened and he was let go from the team, he was playing well at the time. He was playing pretty well. Yeah. So he had more ground to stand on to defend himself. Right now, there are a surprising number of people on Twitter debating whether or not he deserved to be benched. So that's the question I want to talk about with you now. Yep. Obviously, we both agree that he deserves to be benched, but this is that part of the analysis. Does Meteos deserve to be benched? Yeah. From the factual standpoint, I think, what did we see? He's like 6 kills, 24 deaths, KD on the split. We've seen a ton of misplays out of him. We've seen him getting caught out. We've seen macro decisions that are questionable. We've seen a general lack of ganking, and then when there's not a lack of ganking, the ganks aren't good. For me, it's really, really hard to come at this and be like, no, this wasn't deserving. So I'm guessing you agree with me there, but what's the rub here? Like, why are people even debating whether this is a thing?
I mean, I think it's kind of what he said, right? He is a better player who's being held back by, and I get it, right? I don't have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to understand where this argument or line of thought is coming from. You watch him on a lot of these VODs, and who's he palling around with? It's him and Stunt a lot of the time, traveling around. And nobody is questioning the decision to replace Stunt. Yeah. Right. So I think it's the next logical step in that observation to say, put somebody else by his side and see what happens. And that only goes so far, right? Because that's only a percentage of the game. And all the other stuff you talked about hasn't been super crisp, right? And there have been times where he shows up in Someday's lane who, you kind of feel like if Someday is solo in lane against 2 people, his odds are actually, he's probably above 50% odds that he at least goes even. So to show up as a jungler and leave with nothing or less than nothing, it's like, yeah, that's way off, because this guy is doing all the work for you in this case, in a lot of cases. So that stuff is, I'm sure they were looking at, right, to say, okay, synergy with, and actually one of the things I thought was so interesting, I again, listening to the radio broadcast call is a fantastic experience for me. But the pregame analyst desk, they didn't talk at all about Stunt, which I was kind of like, are you guys not watching the same games as us? Because nobody even mentioned, like, a little bit concerned about how Stunt might do in this game up against, a really strong bot lane. But they talked about mid jungle and just how important that is and how off it seemed. And, I don't feel like that's one that we've looked at and thought, wow, what a disaster. I know it's not been a strong suit for sure for us, but Those are all different things that I've been hearing about. And when I think when you put all those together, the argument to keep him in is probably just not as strong. And one last point I'll make. If you're talking about multiple scenarios discussed with him, it's possible that one of the scenarios was to keep him in the starting lineup. We don't know. Maybe that one of their scenarios, I'm just putting it all out there. Maybe one of the scenarios they discussed with him was, we're going to start splitting scrims 50-50, right? And we've all heard Meteos talk about how much he loves splitting scrims.
and not just during his 100T years. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that was enough for him to storm out and say, I'm not training Contractz. I hope he forgets how to play League altogether, because then my job is more secure. So I don't think we can't dismiss that possibility, that there was a version of this conversation and an outcome that looked completely different, and that actually had the good science outcome that I was advocating and hoping for, but that he forced the hand and stormed out and sent those tweets. And then they're like, well, he's told everybody's benched. So what are we going to do? Say he's not benched? That doesn't seem to work.
I'll allow that as a possibility, even though I don't think it's likely. I think the conversation was likely you're benched, but I will allow that as a possibility since we do not know. Here's something though. I said earlier, I don't know why people really think this is debatable. To me, if you don't think, and look, if you think Stunt should be before Meteos, then okay, like that's my opinion too, in terms of like who is the problem, right?
Yeah.
But I can't get on board with people who are like, this isn't deserved. And I saw many people throwing around the word scapegoating, like sucks that the team is looking for scapegoats, or like Meteos is being scapegoated. And that's what he said. Sucks to be scapegoated after the amount of effort I put into the team. It's like, do you guys know what scapegoat means, right? It's like, if you're scapegoated, you are being blamed or punished for someone else's choices and actions, right? You are being held responsible for someone else's failures. Mm-hmm. Are we going to sit here and claim that he's been playing great and hasn't had a failure of a split up to this point? Like, that's so disingenuous to me that if you believe that, to me, you're basically saying I haven't actually watched the games this split.
Right. But I know I like Meteos.
Yeah.
So it must be scapegoating that guy.
But Meteos is a fun guy. And hey, he is a fun dude. Like, I get that part of his personality. I totally get it. And I get that he's got an established reputation and everything. But it's like, look, you cannot infinitely live on your reputation. Like, players have shelf lives. At some point, you're going to have to come to terms with, like, he's not going to be a starting caliber player anymore. And you can't just automatically assume that's being scapegoated, right? It's like there's no world where he's absolved of all responsibility here and he's being scapegoated. Like, that's so wrong that it really reeks of people just taking that tweet that he made and like running with it. Like, it's just so wrong. And I hate that. And go ahead. No, you first.
I was just going to say, it is a really interesting circumstance. He's one of the original League professionals, right?
Yeah.
Like, he is an OG in the scene. He's been on some of the most popular teams that League has ever seen in North America. When you don't have multiple players' careers to look at, right? Think of every one of the best basketball players of all time. Every one of them at some point was benched because they weren't good enough anymore, except for the ones who are still starting. That's true for every one of the all-time greats. Yeah. Everybody in the Hall of Fame at some point got benched because the next guy behind him was better. So we have not reached that point with League of Legends. You can't say that. Not every one of the best players was benched. And so I get it that it can be kind of hard to think like, well, it just doesn't occur, I think, to some people that he could just not be as good anymore. That point in time will arrive. Imagine Meteos at 42. He's not going to be as good.
Yeah.
So what is that point where you start to say there's a diminishing return here? And I don't know that that's where we're at, but it's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
Right? It might just be that he's not as good as he was.
Yeah. And like, I get, somebody brought up the stats tweet. Where he says, I've never cared much about my stats, and I've always played to put my teammates in good situations. Even if that is your metric, he's not meeting it. Like, is it putting your teammates in good situations when you like wander into the jungle and get caught out like at a key time? No, you're not putting your team in a good situation. So again, if you think that he is not like playing poorly right now, it's so hard for me to believe that you're paying close attention, because eye test wise, it's not good. Stats wise, it's not good. Like, what else is there to say? Like, it's always like stats don't tell the full story. That's absolutely true, but you will be more than willing to use stats to like take a dump on a player you don't like. Like if you want Ryoma gone, you'll use that, right? We have to know that it's always not the full story, and we have to account for that, right? And again, just eye test wise, like, it's just really, really difficult to buy that explanation. And people always just operate on assumptions. And actually, Jordan, do you mind if I talk about the crumbs thing really quick?
Oh yeah, go for it.
So speaking of assumptions,
please.
That was just like, that was something to me that stood out, was like all the like speculation flying around at this time. And to me, it reached a like peak when Crumbs tweeted last night as this was all going down. He said, I don't like blindsiding players about benching them. Why not an open conversation early on that poor play will lead to benching? You escalate where you're at and taking action as weeks go by. Right? And it's like, what kind of assumption is that you don't think, first of all, that people know if you don't play well, your job is in danger. And second of all, how are you assuming that this conversation has been had? I literally replied to him, do you have intel that what you're suggesting didn't happen?
Yeah.
And his answer was no. Like, you just, okay, then what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like, gosh, right. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know more about League of Legends than Crumbs. Oh. Right. But that is just such a blunderous thing. And he came back with some like, oh, it made it seem like I was talking about 100T, but I was really talking about the LCS in general. It's like, okay, well then you're still talking about 100T and you still tweeted it right when that happened. So that just is absolutely ridiculous to me. And you're just influencing people's like take on the narrative irresponsibly. And people will eat that up.
That's one of the things I had in mind. I'm glad you kind of just read that exchange out. Earlier when I was talking about, I think a lot of people are willing to look at whatever information they have and fill in the blanks, right? Well, Meteos just said that he got benched and he seemed pretty surprised. I can't believe they would surprise him with this late at night on a Sunday after you lost a tough game. That's brutal. But for all we know, they might have said to him going into this weekend, if this doesn't go well, we're going to have to look at the roster. They could have been that overt. They could have done exactly what people were suggesting they should have done. But because they don't have a public forum where they discuss employment status with Meteos, which is not legally advisable, by the way, don't do that. It's hard for us to say.
Says the HR guy, by the way.
Yeah, it's hard for us to say what they have and haven't done. So it's just, yeah, it is. It's clear to me, Cole, that there's a need for analysis of this sport that is not focused on jungle pathing, because that was about as stone cold a take as I've ever seen. Yeah. I'm just going to put it out there.
So while we're talking about bad assumptions, there was also this thing, which I believe this stemmed from Meteos' tweets. When he said, pretty weird to hear the players on my team didn't know about or agree to the decision. Clearly the people not on the team know what's best for it. So he's bringing his teammates into this. Mm-hmm. First of all, with the timing of everything, I think it's highly unlikely that his teammates A, knew, and B, had time to tell him what they thought about it. Maybe they did. That's an assumption on my part. I don't think it's likely. But even if that's, even if I'm wrong about that, is your expectation, and when I say I'm talking to like anyone listening, all right? Yeah. Is your expectation that teams talk to every player and get them to cast a vote on whether like a roster change specifically, like a specific roster change should be made beforehand?
Yeah.
Or do you just make a decision, inform the players after you inform the person in question, right? This to me is quite obviously not only standard operating procedure, but also just a solid principle of good leadership. If you don't do this, if you just ask everybody, if you take a poll on the team, what you like, you're just opening so many bad political windows in that space, and you're putting so much pressure on players. How can they feel like they can tell the truth about it, especially if they're playing with their friends? You know what I mean? Like that's just such like a bad leadership call if you were to do that. So to me, that again is just a completely unreasonable expectation. And I honestly think that people latched onto it because it came out of those tweets. But I saw quite a lot of people talking about this. I don't think team personnel decisions should be made by committee of your players.
It seems, I almost wonder if I'm in the twilight zone that I need to affirm my support of your position on this, Cole. But that seems just, it doesn't apply in any like. Let me ask you this: are you seeing people saying that should have happened, or is this truly one of those things where this was just the take that deserved to be deleted before it was sent?
Yeah, dude.
I haven't seen, thankfully, to maybe the credit of the people who are observing this, I haven't seen people's like reacting to that. I didn't get a chance to read the replies to that tweet. But yeah, I mean, this is how it has to be done. So if anybody's confused or uncertain about this, or like, yeah, I could go either way. I mean, any organization anywhere in the world, I think some of the some organizations have tried this, right? Like they call it like a holacracy, where everybody makes decisions on behalf of everyone else, and no one makes decisions. Actually, we all just decide to not decide together. Like we will be the worst team ever in League of Legends. And maybe the players could just vote out the coach too while they're at it, and the GM, and they could evict Nate from his office. They could move in there. So it can't happen.
Yeah.
It can't happen, and you shouldn't consult with other players beforehand. That would be really inappropriate. That would be bad.
Yeah, it's just all around a bad idea. So I don't think we should have that expectation. Like, you're gonna, like I said, you're gonna create so many political problems with that. Like, that just no, you don't want that kind of environment on your team. So let's just put that aside as, hey, this is not a good idea. So let's learn from that and move on.
We'll just chalk that up to a moment of frustrated tweeting and release him from that tweet.
Well, good luck walking that back now that it's out there. So Jordan, final question specifically on the Meteos portion of this.
Yep. Then
we're going to continue on. And by the way, we're going to talk quickly about Stunt, and then we're going to talk about Contractz and Poome. Jordan, and we've touched on this, but is this the same situation as 2018, and why or why not?
I think it's not. I think there's some key differences. I think we were actually in a much more disadvantaged position as an organization in 2018. I think our hand was very forced, and we didn't have, if you'll recall, like we basically just had to deal him kind of no matter, like whatever happened. And Ando was, I think he worked out well for us in a lot of ways. Obviously, it was not a long-term play, but like I was pleased and surprised in some ways at how well he did in a lot of games. It didn't last long-term, I'll say again, but I think we actually got lucky in that regard. We still have the opportunity to control this situation. And I'm not meaning like in the evil corporation manner that some people associate with control. I mean,
power and control. Those are terms we've got to be careful with.
Yeah. Damage control, because we need that right now. Strategic roster moves. These are all still things that can happen. And that we need to happen desperately, right? If there's any salvaging this, Meteos might be a player that he is either starting for you and his job is as secure as the day you first signed him, or he's not a player for you. that's possible. In which case, you shouldn't hope to have him as part of a 6-man roster. It won't work. But we still have the opportunity to try to make that happen if we can, if it can be done. He's still signed to us. He is, so we're in a better spot, I will say. I think we're in a better spot. I don't see this as, and here's the other thing that's important. We're not hemorrhaging fan support, right? The situation is different in some of the key ways we've already talked about. But there's a lot of support here for the fact that roster changes are, of course, needed. There'll be disagreement and conversation about the manner in which it was done, the timing, that kind of stuff. But I don't think there's anybody who is outright saying, like, this is not the same thing as when you bench Someday. Like, if we bench Someday because we were just like, yeah, we're not convinced that he's the right player for us, people would be like, are you crazy? Are you insane? What are you doing? So all of those things play to our favor in this situation, more so than I think they did last time around. My hope is that we can control, damage control, strategic roster control this situation, so that we don't lose as much as we lost when we lost Meteos last time.
Yeah, a lot of that will depend on the upcoming Hotline League appearance from PapaSmithy. So again, that will be starting in 25 minutes. PapaSmithy's going on with Hotline League tonight, so we'll wrap up in time to make sure everybody can hop over there and listen live to that.
We'll even raid.
Yeah, we may. Yeah, and so I think what we've learned here through seeing this a couple times, as you mentioned, is that like there's just too much of an ego and maturity problem here involved on the Meteos side. Like it's hard to not think that. And he didn't take the news well the first time, understandably. And he didn't take the news the second time well, understandably also. But like I think he has just overreacted to the point where he just comes off as being like petulant and immature. And he's paying the price this time a lot more than he did in 2018. And I still think that in 2018 he should have paid a higher price. So I'm glad that the dust is settling in this way for 100 Thieves, just because I think that that's what's right more than anything else. But man, it's sad. It's sad. Like, if we could redo this and not have, I mean, like I said, I like Meteos' energy when he's like on the heist, and seems like he's a fun guy. And when we picked him up, like I said, he was just crushing for Optic, and it just has not worked out. So it's very sad. But there's leaving the way he did, and then there's leaving the way Stunt did. Yep. And I think that that's worth mentioning. So
yes,
really quickly, just to touch on Stunt. Stunt, what was this, like 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, somewhere in the not too long ago window, Stunt put out a tweet longer about his thoughts on wrapping up with the team. And that it's like a 180 degree turn from how Meteos handled everything. First of all, he was patient. It came out almost 24 hours after these things happened.
Assuming he had a conversation around the same time.
Yeah, assuming he did. Well, yeah. Well, good point. But either way, it was not immediate.
Yep.
He took time. He really laid out things like not only what happened, but his feelings on the situation. And then he expressed like a lot of like, you know what, like this is just kind of the way it is. And what I had asked 100 Thieves for was a place of stability. I had not had stability in my career up until then. I was switching teams all the time. They promised that to me, and they gave it to me.
Yeah.
And he expressed his gratitude for that. And, it doesn't work out. He's going to take some time to de-stress and figure out what's next. Like, it's like he got a personal consult from Broxa on how to write this tweet longer or something. It was so great.
Maybe he did.
It was so great, man. Like,
it was.
And I have to say, my respect for Stunt like genuinely grew a lot. Like, I felt a little bit like the Grinch, when his heart is growing and breaking the thing. Like, that's what it felt like to me. I was like, dang, man.
Yeah.
That was such an inspiring and great response to it. And it's like night and day different. Yeah. And if things were really like, if 100 Thieves was just this evil organization, like running this, scam on all the players, like, do you think he would have expressed that kind of sentiment?
No.
I don't think so. And yes, you do have to make sure you're not burning your bridges. You have to make sure you have options for the future. So yeah, it's not in your best interest to set everything on fire. But he went above and beyond, and that gave me a lot of confidence in like how the team has been handling these things. So
yeah, he even Cole, and this is what leads me to believe it's genuine. I have no reason to doubt that it's genuine, right? Like I'm not even saying like, oh yeah, I'll believe it. Never. He even said, I believe we could have turned this around. He voiced his difference of opinion.
Right.
And he did it in a way that was respectful and just matter of fact. I believed in this team. I think we could have done it. I regret that I didn't have a chance to do it. That is the perfect exit. That is exiting with a lot of dignity. And I'll say this. I had a hard time personally, and I'm not like, don't feel sorry for me, guys. But it's a challenge to talk about a player who is clearly struggling on a team that you really like and who genuinely individually you like the players, right? It's not easy. And I think a couple of weeks ago I said, Cole, it feels I'm struck by how weird it is that I'm talking to you advocating for this person to lose their job.
Yep.
And it feels kind of gross. But that's sports, right? That's this weird thing that we all do and that we all kind of gather around over. This makes me, I want to root for Stunt. I would love nothing more than for Stunt to find another team and to dominate. Like he is one of those players who, whenever I see him now, if he decides to continue playing, and he said he wants to compete, if he decides to continue playing, he finds a spot to play, I will root for him whenever I see him. Yeah. And it's largely because of this.
Yeah.
So if you ever doubt the power of a message, just think about this, reflect on this moment and how you feel individually about these two players at this moment in time. And then remember that one of them is still on our team and how you feel about him now. And imagine if you are a teammate of his who you've just been dragged into this thing that you want nothing to do with. And actually I've ceded my voting rights to who's on this team willfully. I don't want that. So don't bring me into it, please. Or a coach. Right now, I'm feeling more positive about Stunt, even though there's no question that him leaving the team was the right move. And that's a big conflict that I think we're going to have to wrestle with. If he sticks around, like there's a trust factor there for everybody involved, right? It's like, yo, man, why would you do that? Why would you? This is the reality of sports. Sometimes you're going to get news you don't like. You're going to have to sit on the bench. You're going to have to let somebody else take a shot. And that cannot be the nuclear button for this entire situation. We can't blow it all up every time somebody gives you some news you don't like. We got to stick with it. He's making it hard for us to rally behind him on that. If he shows back up, I'm going to have a lot of questions.
Yep. And following the Rec League tradition invoked by Hoodie God and Shmooly, everybody in chat is giving purple hearts to Stunt. We're officially purple hearting Stunt, just like we do with Rec League players who get overpowered in game. We retire them and give them the Purple Heart Award. We are doing so to Stunt. So serious kudos to him for taking that on the chin and being big in the moment. And like I said, for people watching, I just want to underscore Jordan said, don't underestimate the power of the messaging there.
And I'm looking at chat right now and it's a wall of purple hearts. And that says a lot. And it seems like a silly gesture, but that's respect. And I think we all benefit from the people who are willing to put everything on the line and dedicate their life to doing this stuff for our entertainment. So it's important that we respect people who do that. So I'm glad to see you guys doing that.
Honestly, we're getting people who just watch and are not usually active in chat chiming in with purple hearts. Like that's how serious that is right now.
So drop by. If you see Stunt streaming, man, drop by. And regardless of how you felt about his play in the last 3 weeks or beyond, he's earned my respect. I hope you show him some respect too.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
All right. So that brings us to what now? Okay. So that's those are the guys in the past. And now we're here to talk about the guys in the future. Look, we have we we're in a very interesting position in that we have games coming up against some of the dregs of the LCS. We've got Golden Guardians, who are sitting at 2-4, and Dignitas, who is the universal meme team right now at 0-6. Like, even Immortals tweeted a very good meme about Dignitas being bad earlier today. So the thing is, we have to so carefully set our expectations here. And this is really important for us as fans because of who's coming in, right? Poome and Contractz. One of these guys is an established LCS presence with a track record. Okay. One of these guys is basically as new as you could possibly be to pro play.
Yep.
So Jordan and I wanted to set expectations for this so that we are properly like thinking about what's about to happen. Because if this is one of those situations where it's not, you don't really have a whole lot to gain from these games, and you could lose a lot because you're making roster changes. There's Golden Guardians and Dignitas. If you lose to Dignitas and Golden Guardians, you risk a lot of like, oh, that is the stupidest decision ever. So let's go through this and talk about it. Contractz first. Jordan, in your opinion, what are reasonable expectations for us to have for Contractz' performance? Where do you think he'll be now, and where do you think we could expect him to be by playoff time?
Yeah, I'm reminded of this conversation I'd queued up in my head to have with you about letting players play their style and kind of do their thing. I hope that we do that with him. And here's what I envision by that. He's an aggressive player, and I hope that we give him room to int. That's going to sound stupid. I hope that we let him play his game, take fights, right? Start him out in his comfort zone, playing the way he likes to play. And for me, and I hope that for others, the reaction is not, if we see him go in and take a fight that is clearly not a good fight from the observer's perspective, we don't automatically say, well, he's washed, right? Or he's not LCS ready. So my expectation is that the coaching staff prepare him to play his game and draft a champion, a composition, whatever that they can do to enable him to do that. And my expectation, like how it goes, I'm not hoping that he is our savior. I'm not expecting that because I don't think that's fair. It's always been the case when we brought somebody out from the academy. I don't think that's a realistic or fair expectation to have of somebody. All I expect is that here's what I'll say. We need him to be consistent, right? We just got to get the unforced errors, to borrow a term from tennis, out of our team. Because right now that's killing us. It's killing us. I can take decisional errors or things where you'd say, well, you shouldn't have taken that fight, buddy. What I cannot have as a fan is more of these mistimed ganks, these, just getting caught in really bad spots. Like, dive in and take a fight, please. I'm happy to watch you do that, even if there's no chance you're going to come out alive. Let's go for that. Let's start to develop an actual play style. We talked about that last week, how we just don't have that. That's what I'm hoping from Contractz. I'm hoping he can bring some reliability and consistency, even if he's consistently taking fights that we might say, let's work on not taking as many of those.
Yeah. I think the thing that you're alluding to that maybe you didn't say explicitly is it sure seems like this meta suits how he plays. Right?
Yeah, I didn't say
it. It sure seems like this is like time for an aggressive jungler to get in there, mix it up, and make a lot of plays, right? And that is the play style that Contractz has demonstrated to this point. I will say that when we first signed him, I'm on record being like, yeah, I think this is a sneaky good jungle pickup because I thought he was playing pretty well. He obviously has a very good history. And I was really surprised that we got him under the radar because it seemed like he had one off split and people read a lot into that. Now, to be fair, it had been a little up and down in academy, in my opinion, for him. And I haven't watched like 100% of academy. And I did notice there were times when I would tune in and be like, okay, Contractz is going to like try this crazy play. Let's see what happens. And it did not work out. So that's like not a rare thing.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like there have been a little consistency issues, but I'm like, I feel like you are, like, I'm so willing to let him just go at that and see what effect it has on the rest of the team. I don't want to forget that, like, we are figuring out what this LCS roster is supposed to look like in the future, right? Yeah. And if you thought like Meteos was a long-term piece for 100 Thieves, I think that is not the right assumption. Like 2 more years down the line, it would be hard to expect him to be like, okay, we finally got like our world's run team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that I don't know. I feel like Contractz is more in that category. Mm-hmm. More of like this could be like a longer term way we approach the game. So I think that we should pay attention to how that affects the play style of the whole team. I'm virtually certain we're going to see him have moments on stream that are going to look bad. Mm-hmm. And I think we should be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Be prepared to accept it. Because we certainly have seen those moments out of Meteos too. So when you see that, it's like, well, if it's a 1-to-1 replacement, then then whatever. But I personally believe there's more upside to be had than to be lost. And let's not forget that we also potentially have some like banger jungle play coming up from 100 Next as well, like looking even further down the future. So
yeah, the 100 Next program is actually the sneaky winner in this whole thing, right? Because those guys are insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's what I will say. I don't think Contractz should have an infinite leash here. I don't think it's like, okay, whatever happens is great. I don't think that's really the case, because this is a player who has been to Worlds. Like he's made it out of groups at Worlds, you know, like this is not somebody who's new. So I don't think we should sit here and expect like, oh, he can play like a rookie and it's totally fine. We need to have a higher bar for him.
Yeah.
But
he's not Poome, in other words, Cole.
Exactly. Yeah. But, and I know we're wanting to transition into that, but I do want to say just first, so I don't expect immediate success out of this anyway. It could be that it happens, but it's like this change is being made. We can't expect it to just go off with a hitch. Like if that happens, it's an unexpected bonus.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to look great at first.
It's kind of how we approach this whole roster.
Yeah.
That we've said the exact same thing about Ryoma, and we've been rewarded. He's made big strides.
Yeah.
So I think it's prudent to take a similar approach in how you think about these 2 new players we're adding to our roster.
Right. And that's why it's like contextually tricky though, because it's possible. It's possible that we drop 1 or 2 of these games this weekend just on the sheer newness of the team as a unit, the sheer newness of Poome, which we'll get to in a second. So even if we believe that the long-term trajectory is better, like it may not be pretty at first. And we need to be accepting of that and not see if this happens, if we come in and get a loss or 2 right off the bat, we can't be like, oh, like, look, they're so wrong. Why did they bench Meteos? Yeah. Like that's not the play here. As always, the play is to be more patient with it, see how it works out, try and analyze it piece by piece as much as that's possible. Let them work a little bit. Let it cook. Yep. Which is going to be super important for Poome. So again, this is a guy who is on the younger side. He's 20 years old. I think he's going to be 21 soon. He's got virtually 0 pro experience. He came out of 100 Next to Academy for 6 games, I think it is, and he's already being bumped up to LCS.
Yep.
Traditionally not the recipe for success of a player. So we do have to reconcile that with the decision to play him. So Jordan, can you just share quickly how you think, like how you're weighing potential impact on Poome in the long term by throwing him in so early versus what the potential payoff would be?
Yeah, I've talked about this before. So if you've been listening for more than this week, you'll be familiar with my position on this. But you can't actually just break a player, right? So there's a risk to this, and there are things you can do as a staff and as support for a player to try to mitigate that risk. But it's a risk for sure, right? There's never a perfect time or a great time to be thrown into the LCS, right? Even if you are starting off, there's always going to be pressure. It's always going to be part of this experience and any professional, athletic endeavor you take. My hope for Poome is that he, ideally, my ideal outcome here is that he performs at or similar to the level that we've seen from Stunt. And I don't know that is asking, setting an unreasonable expectation. I mean, just for your perspective on that. But I think that we'll see flashes from him that give people confidence in the same way that we've seen it from Ryoma. I think, not to put them on the same level. They're not. Ryoma's got a lot of professional experience before, even though it was in Osh. But they're not even the same player, right? But when you have a newer, rawer talent, you look for those flashes where it's like, this is what the kid can do, right? Yeah. And if we can keep him going, and if we can build on these things, and that's where I feel like the and I've seen some of this already in the academy, right? There are moments where I'm like, oh, that was a pretty slick play. Like, whoa, okay. I want to see some of those. Like, that is what I'm watching for as a fan, because I think that indicates to me what we can expect from him in the future going forward. And in the same way for Contractz, right? What I'm not going to look at is he winning lane? Like, this is going to feel really like I'm sandbagging. He's up against some of the best, support talent in the world. There are import players. There's Vulcan. Like, the LCS has some really strong support players. And granted, the LCS is not the LCK or the LPL, but these are good players. Make no mistake. So I don't think we should look at this as there's a period where he's acclimating to the LCS and just assume that this is the best we'll get from him, because he is going to get better. He's very young. He's new to this. And what we need to watch out for is that we don't stunt that development by, no double entendre there, by keeping the expectations on him and saying, it's on you to save the season. You've got Cody Sun next to you. If he's not able to pop off and carry us, then you failed. We just got to measure it, which means there are going to be situations where we're not able to perform at the level people are going to want us to, by definition.
Yeah. So is it fair to say then, in summary, let's not expect the world from this guy, especially right away. Let's look for flashes. Let's be impressed if he does do well. And otherwise, if he isn't feeding 4 or 5 kills a game, it can be seen as either a replacement or an improvement. Is that fair?
Yeah, totally fair. And when you say it like that, it doesn't seem like a super high bar, which is why I think this switch was made. I mean, here's the other thing, the last thing I'll say on this topic. In his video, and we're going to hear from Papa more in 3 minutes. In his video, he said, we want to get back to our aspirations of being a world, world's contender, right? We want to be at Worlds. Let me remind you guys, they're going to do Worlds in 2021 too. It happens every year. And it might be that Poome is not the player or the option that gives us the best chance of getting there this year, but that he is for getting there next year. That is entirely possible. And, so we got to keep that in mind. That's part of this idea of trust the Papa, right? Just because the immediacy is not part of the decision being made, you have to take into account the potential future benefit. And especially when it comes to younger talent. And I think that, the time we're restarting this whole process, right? It's going to take trust that the progression is going to be there. And when you see that progression, you follow that trend line, and maybe you're competing for top 3, if not this split, next summer, right? That's possible.
Yeah. Well, nice segue to what should be the final topic of the night for us, and then we'll get off and move over to Hotline League. Look, trust the Papa, man. This, I think last episode, I kind of, it wasn't an ultimatum, right? But I was putting it down that we will know how they are thinking about this team right now based on the actions that they take. And if they make a change, then that means they are wanting to win. And if they're not, they're going to sit back and just see what materializes, which is a way more passive approach. Now, I think Trust the Papa was all about giving patience for this stuff to all fall in place in the long term. I think right now we've come to the end of the first leg of the experiment. And when all of us got to the point where like, we really need to pull the plug on this, that's exactly what happened. Okay. And it is the stunt change, for instance, is later than I wanted it to be. Okay. But they did make it. They made the Meteos change too. Those are two huge things that they did that show that they are looking to the future and that they want to win. So for me, as like a how much do we trust the Papa question, it's like this did a lot to help me believe in that even more, right? Remember, like there's a delicate balance to come to in the LCS that there really isn't such thing as tanking. Okay. There is like, cause it's not like you're stockpiling draft picks and you're like trading players in return for draft picks and all that stuff. Like if you make that, analogy to traditional sports like NBA, NFL, it's not going to hold. Okay. Trusting the process, trusting the Papa in this situation is more about, having a directional development for the team and the gusto to make a change when it's required, when things aren't working. All right.
Right.
And we saw action being taken along those lines, which means, in my opinion, that so far we are still in good hands. So I'm happy to see that change made. Very, very interested to see these specific changes and how they're going to play out. I think it'll tell you a lot about where we're going to be in 2021, how these things work out. And so I think we're calling this first leg of the experiment not successful, and so we're moving into phase 2.
Phase 2, which in some ways feels like phase 5 or 6. Like,
yeah, it's hard if you look at total 100 Thieves fandom, but for PapaSmithy's tenure,
yes, this is it.
Phase 2 is here.
So that the proof is in the pudding. We'll see what happens, but it's going to be fun. Like this is not the slog that we might have been presented with so far as the rest of this split goes, because with that same team we had last week on the Rift for the rest of the split, I don't know how much fun I would have had watching it, to be honest, because it was pretty frustrating in some ways. Yep. So
now we have something to believe.
That's right.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us tonight. Like, we had a super long podcast. Thanks everybody for sticking with us. Appreciate everybody's thoughts. I got so many DMs on Twitter and Discord, just like flooding the inbox with like takes about this, questions about this. I'm sorry I didn't get to talk to everybody individually about this. Hopefully our thoughts here are pretty clear on it. And we can continue the conversation in our Discord if you are not already in there. And for now, we'll go get ready to move over to Hotline League. As always, everybody, this has been Hunter Talk, powered by Ripid Energy Fuel. Shout out. And we love you. And we miss you already.
Take care.